All right, everybody, welcome to the Discovering Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Scandariato with Red Knight Properties. And today we have a very special guest with us, Shannon Robnett. And Shannon is the Chief Executive Officer at Phoenix Commercial Construction. He's also the founder of Vertical Equity. And Shannon's actually based in Treasure Valley out in Idaho. He's been there for almost 40 years, and he's spent most of the time in the real estate industry, primarily as a builder and developer. But he's been involved from start to finish on over 200 million worth of construction projects covering multifamily, office, city halls, police stations, schools, industrial storage, you name it. But today we're going to focus on development in terms of the syndication model, which is not really that prevalent right now, at least from what I've seen. So he's been able to educate me, and I'd love for him to educate our audience here. So I want to give him a round of applause for coming on, and really appreciate you coming on, Shannon.
Hey, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to the conversation.
Sure. So you just want to, how'd you get started, and why are you, choosing development syndications? It's very hard, in my opinion, to get involved in a syndication for development because it hasn't historically been that accessible to the general public. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
Well, Anthony, when people ask me how I got involved, it started at a very young age, working for my dad, who was a builder, and my mother was a real estate agent. In fact, there's 5 generations of real estate in my family, and it was just all we ever did. I learned around the dinner table about selling this property and doing a 1031. I think I always grew up with the term 1031 floating around my house. And so my upbringing was very formative in what I did. And at 20 years old, I was working on a job for my dad. We were building a warehouse for a dollar store outfit, and my crane operator was talking to me about needing some space and wanting a place to park all his cranes and an office. And I'd befriended the old lady and her son next door. And as I got to learn that they wanted to sell their property and it needed to be rezoned. And so it wasn't that I took my last $500. I took my only $500. I mean, y'all remember being that broke. And I wrote that earnest money check and I put that under contract and I got that place rezoned and I sold it to my crane operator without ever doing anything to it. And so that started my progress of the building and the development side, where you could develop a subdivision and sell the lots, or you could develop a subdivision and build everything in it. And so I started taking that approach, and one thing led to another down life's road. Here we are. We've completed 180 units of brand new garden style that we filled this last year. And we've got about 500 units in the pipeline for this year. But what I saw was that, I quickly outgrew my capital. My friends and family, my partners that I'd worked with, raising $1.5 million wasn't that big of a deal, $2 million. But, we've got a one going right now that's the capital raise on it's $9 million for a $45 million project. That takes some doing. And getting involved in the syndication model, if anything's new to me, it's the syndication itself, the model itself of how you break it down into $50,000 blocks or $100,000 blocks or that kind of a thing. But everything else, it fits very well for me. And so for me, I've kind of taken the approach that from a completely different direction, not that I can syndicate, therefore I'm multifamily. I'm multifamily, therefore I must syndicate to raise the funds. And so that's kind of how I wound up in the space I'm in.
Very interesting story. So can you kind of talk about a couple of the projects that you've done? Like you mentioned the garden style. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I bought a piece of ground. We rezoned it. We finished a subdivision on it. We did everything that was necessary there. We put in about 1,200 feet of road, curb gutter and sidewalk, and we built 180 units there. And we filled those. And I was using a property management company here in town. They were recommended, and and I just was very unhappy. And so I fired him, and I hired a guy here in town who I'd heard of him through his reputation, and I hired him, and we sat down. And one of the things that we did, Anthony, was we really broke down our budget and put the property management on the developer's team. And what I mean by that is when we finished it, we had a brand new apartment complex, and around us there was about 4 other apartment complexes that were brand new also. Same, 180, 190, 240 units. They were all about the same size, all had about the same amenities. Some had this, some had that, bigger pool, smaller clubhouse, more of this, and we began to strategize. And what I decided, Anthony, was that I wanted my apartments to be $35 a unit more. Because what we saw was in our marketplace, people were looking for what they wanted, and $35 was not going to dissuade you from what you wanted. If it was, I don't know that I really wanted you as a tenant anyway, because you were going to leave me in a year anyway when the next guy was offering you a $99 free month move-in or whatever like that. And so by putting that $35 on there, we were able to raise the value of our project on a 5.5 cap by over $1.5 million just in our lease up, right? It took us 3.5 months longer than we had anticipated, but our lease up value was phenomenal. We were about halfway through that when my property manager came to me and he says, I found another way for us to add another $35. And I think we're going to call ours $35 property management or something. But we started providing cable and internet as a bulk, and we were able to give everybody bigger, better, faster cable and internet packages than what they could get on their own. And we were making $35 a door on it. So at the end of the day, we were able to take the time, fill it ourselves, and bring our value up about $3.5 million over what the appraised value was through our ancillary income. And from there, I've got contracts to build a couple hundred units for some other guys, but we've got one project that's 36 units that's ground up. So it's the same floor plan, same model as what we just finished. For example, it's a project that's going to cost about $5.5 million to build. The appraisal on it is $6.5 million. The capital raise on it's $1.3 million. But when you get done, you've got 36 brand new units. You don't have to worry about, are the air conditioners going to go out? Is a hot water heater going to fail? Do we have a water main under the building from 100 years ago that's going to break in the middle of the night one time? Or, you don't have any of those things. And so one of the other things that we look at too, Anthony, is that in a lot of cases, most people in the value add model try to find a way to fit their growth people in with their coupon clippers or their mailbox money people, and try to bunch everybody up into the same ball and go, okay, we're going to buy this apartment complex, and we're going to buy it at top of the market because we got to take the other guy out. Then once we get it, we're going to spend some CapEx on it. We're going to add the value to it. We're going to force the appreciation in it. And if everything goes well, then we're going to see a return in 10 years. We're going to get to an 8% cash on cash return. But then from there, it's going to take 10 years for us to really harvest our money. And what I realized, Anthony, is that half your crowd wants the growth but doesn't want to wait. And the other half of the crowd doesn't really care about the growth. They'd rather have a 6% cash on cash return, but they'd like the money every month. And so one of the things that I've done with mine is I've split my syndications in half, because the growth is good enough because I'm not buying at the top of the market. I'm building my value, right? So if you look at it, we're going to come in at a $5.3 million total sticker price on a project that's got a CBRE appraised value, not mine, but a national appraisal of $6.4 million. There's plenty of money in there for everybody. So I can take just my growth people and say, hey, growth people, let's do 23% this year. Let's build it in 9 months, because you can build things fairly quickly out here. We don't have a lot of regulation that stalls us for years and years to get a set of plans. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I got a set of building permit plans on a 36 unit apartment complex in 2 months. Right. So we don't.
I should move out there.
Well, there's lots of other reasons you ought to come check it out
That's
here,
true.
Anthony.
That's true.
But so we'll build it in 9 months. If it takes us 3 months, 4 months to stabilize, in a year, we're there, and we know what our sticker price is, and we know that things are typically trading under market. The other thing to really focus on right now, Anthony, when you look at the world that we're sitting in with what coronavirus has done to everybody, and we don't know. I think the biggest thing that scares everybody is that we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know, is this a good investment? It was a good investment 3 months ago. Is it not a good investment now? The news media has scared the snot out of everybody about collecting rent. We have had no issues with collecting rent. We've had to talk more. We've had to communicate more, but we haven't had to worry about that. So when you look at that, you're taking the next 6 to 9 months to build. You're coming out at the end of what everybody's going to figure out with coronavirus. In a year, everybody will know everything there needs to know about what happened. And we're going to be looking at a stabilized product. And in an appraisal, as you know, our rents are untrended. So if we get the rent we were going to get in December, in February or March of next year, we're going to be dialed in. We're going to be hitting our numbers. So in that model, it's really easy. Then you take it from that model where you've got your growth, your people jumped into that. Usually those are a lot of IRA builders, people that want to really take their deferred tax, revenues to the next level. We're getting 22, 24% returns on this, right? Then we come over and we move that to another group, which is essentially double syndicating it, right? We sell it from one of my syndications to another one of people who they don't want the growth. They're not trying to make $1 million in 10 years. They need to make this money now, pay the grocery bill, pay the light bill. So they're looking for that 7% return, 6% return with no problems. So now they have a brand new building. They have brand new management. They've got they're not going to have any issues in the next 10-year life of this project. And so that's kind of something that's really, really unique about what I do. And I think it's really been an interesting process because a lot of people, and then there's still the growth in 10 years, but you don't have the typical flat spot in it after you've spent your CapEx, getting it to ramp back up to where it's really making you money.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, and this is more of a question, do you think that it's, because some of the numbers you threw out there that are a little astonishing to me, just because maybe geographically the cost to build versus I'm on the Northeast, West Coast essentially. So just the cost to build is like, there's a substantial delta between what you mentioned and what it is over in my neck of the woods.
Right.
And I think what's really interesting, like you said, we're in the middle of coronavirus when we're recording this. The product that you're developing, it's still new. There ain't many other new developments coming up in the next year, and you're still going to be able to push your rents, which is really interesting. At least, I guess this is the question I do have is, at least in some of the areas that I invest in and my partners, if a new development comes up compared to our product, like you said, the 1970s garden style, usually because the cost to build in the Northeast is so substantial, we're looking at a delta of typically $400 to $500 in rent per month between new construction versus rehabbed value add 1970s product. So I think I just love to hear more of your thoughts on that, more geographically, what's been making more sense.
Yeah, Anthony. And I think if you look at it from a percentage factor, I think it's the same, right? So a typical 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit here goes anywhere from, 900 to 1,300, 1,400, right? Okay. So 13, we're getting 1,395 in our brand new product. 900 is going to get you the 1970s product, right?
2-bedroom.
2-bedroom, yeah. 2 parking spots, granite countertops, vinyl floors, nylon carpets, 9-foot ceilings. I mean, all the stuff, right? So when you look at it percentage-wise, I think we're probably the same. Your delta and our delta percentage-wise is, it's probably somewhere between 20 and 25% more rent for new, right? But it also has a lot to do with marketing strategies. I've watched a lot of property managers, and coronavirus should be a very shining example of why your property manager should manage your real estate portfolio like a stock portfolio, right? It needs to be in top shape any given day, because you may not have known it 6 months ago, but you may need to sell today, right? And if you've done all the concessions that a normal property manager will do to get the bill, hey, Anthony, look, I got your building full in record time. Yeah, you gave away 2 months rent to everybody. If I got to sell in the next year, I'm totaled, right? And so we do a lot of things that are not typical in our market, but when you're trying to fill 180 units in kind of a short period of time, you need to do some things. And so instead of offering concessions, one of the things that we offer is short-term rents, right? So we will do a 3-month rent. We will do a 6-month lease. We will do a 9-month lease. That allows us to have turnover, not all at the same time, because we rent, like probably most people, we rent a majority of our units in May, June, July, August, and September, right?
Sure.
Nobody wants to have all those renewals come on at the same time, because then you're fighting with everybody else. So if you can get some 3-month rents in there, some 6 months, we even, on this last complex, we spent about $15,000 buying furniture, and we rented complete units, furnished units, so that we had something for other people that maybe the other guys weren't, that kept us kind of in that sweet spot. But the other side of it is when you're putting on a brand new product, you're able, I'm just going to be honest, I'm not real familiar with your value add lending situations, but I know in new construction, when we typically bring on a 9-month build, we've got an 18-month construction loan, and that's an interest-only loan on about $3.5 million of the 5.4, okay, that we need, and we can be at 70% occupancy and be just fine. Pay all of our bills, pay our property management, right? So we have a choice to go 70% rents where we're competing head-to-head with your 1973, or we can stay at full price and only fill 70% of the units, but we can be more flexible, I believe, if we were both to have brought our product to market at the same time. We will have more flexibility, I believe, than a value add, because when you bought that product, you paid very close to top of the market for the condition it was in. The value add is usually that you're going to repaint, recarpet, rebrand, modernize what's there. In the new, we've brought that to market, and now we're in the process of tenantizing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So a question that I do have is for you, basically your business model. You mentioned that there's like almost 2 syndications going on. So once you get the building stabilized, you then go out and syndicate to basically people who are looking for passive income in a fixed coupon distribution style. Now, when you're done with the build, obviously you have to take out the construction loan, as you just mentioned. What do you usually do? Do you refinance out of that? And then go ahead.
Yeah, so we really treat it like a second syndication. So most of my people that are in the growth fund, they're there for the mid-20s on their returns, but they know they're in it for a short period of time, 12 months, maybe 18. I've got a 190 unit project that's going to take 36 months. That pays a flat 18% for 36 months. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, sign me up.
But what's that?
Sign me up.
I'm going to send you the paperwork when we're done here. But the reality is when you're done, you're then going out and you're getting a new appraisal and you're saying, hey, we beat the street. We got better rents. We're getting that done. Now I've got to raise the equity on that, just like you would in your value add, right? So I got a $6.5 million appraisal. So I got a 6.7 purchase price because everything's selling for under appraisal. I got a 6.7 purchase price. I got to bring in 20% equity on that. I'm staying in for 15% of the total cash brought in, right? And so then we know what our number is. We raise that, and that's going into just a straight coupon model. And 36 months, 48 months from now, we may refinance, but not likely. We're likely to lock in a long-term loan that's going to take us into a place where we're receiving, maybe it will not be an 8% pref. It'll be a 7, it'll be a 6, but it'll be locked in because there's no upcycle of buying this and changing it to that. It is strictly, here's the rents, and they're only going to go up, and in the Northwest, in the Pacific Northwest, we've been seeing double-digit rent appreciation. So, we're projecting a 5% rent appreciation when the last 5 years we've had double digits. And so we're still going to get some decent rent appreciation.
Sure.
But it works more like an annuity at that point because we take the income that comes in, we pay the debt, we pay our investors, and that's how we divvy it up. So it's a really simple model at that point.
Very interesting. Really interesting. So, so I want to go back to the first project that you were talking about with the $35 upcharge, essentially. What did you end up doing with that building? I'm just curious. Was this model?
We're in the process. We're in the process of being of finaling the disposal on that. That one we didn't get to the syndication of it quick enough. Like I said, I'm fairly new to the syndication process. But I'll tell you the truth. We got a pre-construction appraisal on that in 2017 of $29 million, and we're under contract at 38.5. So
Wow.
some significant upside through things, but I mean, $4 million of that was through accessory or ancillary rents, $35 for your cable, $35 per door more than the next guy. I mean, it's like, my property manager knew that the easiest way to make me mad was to rent 11 units at the same price in 1 week, right? Because I knew there could be an escalation there, and that $35 was what the whole model was built on.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we were able to do very well for ourselves and a couple of partners that were involved in that, but we did not get that one into the syndication. We didn't get far enough down the road with syndication to keep that one.
Very interesting. So why have you pivoted towards this syndication model, at least recently?
Well, Anthony, I believe and I've said this for a long time, I believe the world's a pyramid. And not a pyramid scheme or not a multi-level marketing or anything like that. But I believe that if you go out there to find one guy with $10 million, you might find one, but for every one of him, there's 10 guys with $1 million. And for every millionaire, there's 10 guys with $100,000. When you do the math, it is much easier to fund these things at $50,000 a whack than it is to try and find one guy. I mean, the reality is that's why ground up syndication is not a thing. That's why there's not a lot of people being offered the opportunity. The easiest equivalent for us in our area in the Pacific Northwest is fourplexes, because one person can buy a fourplex. But the numbers on the fourplexes are in the mid fours on your cap rates because it's available and it's not available and the demand is so high. So when I can produce 180 units or a 200 unit complex with professional grade amenities, with professional management, with a complete hands-off service that by the piece is going to be less to construct, just because of its design, why wouldn't I offer that same sort of thing in a format that wasn't that different than a community of fourplexes that have been individually sold off?
Exactly. And there's so many benefits to the
Yeah.
syndicated model in the respects that you just mentioned. It makes so much sense, and especially if your niche is going to be new development and new construction. There's not many players that I'm aware of that specialize in that. So I think you're onto something.
Well, the other thing too, Anthony, is everybody likes to have a mentor. Everybody likes to have a professional that's done this before. There's very few people that want to hack this thing on their own and do it all by themselves. And with my resume in construction and development, I've got a very proven track record with building things, with stabilizing things. We do a lot of industrial space where we build the subdivision out, we build the buildings out, we rent the buildings. As soon as they're rented, we sell them. So we've done a lot of that for a long time. But being able to offer Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, or some of the people that are in my growth group, they're in their 30s. They're making great money as doctors. They're making great money as attorneys. They want it to grow for their retirement, but they don't have time to do all the work, all the research. And so being a part of a syndication is kind of like a book club. It really is a place where you can get the information, you can be with like-minded people, and yet you're not the one that has to make the decision. Do we throw these deadbeats out? Are these guys getting tickets for violating this? Do I get called at 3:00 in the morning when the water heater broke down? None of this is your problem, but you get to drive by and point at it and go, yeah, that's mine.
Yeah. I own a few of these doors.
That's right. Which ones? I don't know. Maybe it's these ones. Maybe it's those ones.
No, it's definitely very interesting. No, this is a great show, Shannon, and we're going to kind of wind it down just a little bit now. I usually like to ask a few questions towards the end of the show, with the first one being, you've been doing this for a very long time. Is there a book that you recommend, whether it's real estate related or just business related, that kind of helped you grow your business?
Well, one of the things I've always been is an avid reader, and I think one of the books you've always got to start with is Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you're getting into this kind of stuff. But the one I read recently that I really enjoyed was Homeless to Billionaire, and it's a story of a guy at 16 years old, finds himself a native of Europe in Thailand, and through really great business practices, built himself into being a billionaire. And it just shows that you can do anything in any language, especially if you're doing business the right way, if you're honoring yourself, if you're honoring others, if you're conducting your business practices in an ethical way. So yeah, that's definitely a book I would recommend.
Never heard of that. I'm definitely gonna
Almost a Billionaire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. You mentioned mentors. Has there been a mentor for you?
I grew up with two of them at the dinner table, like I said, but I have been very privileged in my life to have had several really great mentors that have taken me along. And one of them was a guy by the name of Mike Matzik, who built a lot of apartments. And he always used to tell me, he would make you take him to lunch. If you wanted to talk with him, get some advice, he'd make you take you to lunch. And the first thing he said when his order came is, he says, "This advice is worth exactly what you paid for it." So, it was a $9 burrito or whatever it was, but that was what the advice was worth. But the guy was invaluable to me just in helping me define, character that you wanted to be identified with.
Very interesting. And Shannon, do you have any hobbies outside of real estate?
I'm a pilot, and I have a flight school, part tax write-off, part business, but it's definitely something that helps me unwind. There's nothing like being stressed out about what's going on at a macro level, jumping in the plane and cruising over everything and just kind of getting a 10,000-foot view and really just relaxing.
Really cool. I did my first helicopter ride a couple months ago. Very
Helicopters are a different thing. I don't know.
Different thing.
I don't know how much I trust them.
Different thing. Very surreal experience, nonetheless.
Yeah.
When I'm in Idaho, I'll definitely stop by.
Please do.
And so how can people find you, Shannon?
Sure. Well, the easiest way to get a hold of me is just shannonrobnett.com. I'm all the usual places. Facebook, Shannon Robnett Industries is our business page there, SRI. Or you could follow me at Shannon Ray Robnett on Instagram. MyVerticalEquity.com is where all of our syndications are placed. So if you want to look at our deals, go to MyVerticalEquity.com. You fill out a profile because the SEC requires you to tell me you're an accredited investor before we can talk business. You fill that out and you can see our deals right there, and it's a beautiful thing. So, but yeah, ShannonRobnett.com or MyVerticalEquity.com.
Great, Shannon. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put in the comments section a link to Shannon's website and LinkedIn and so on and so forth. So really appreciate you coming on again, Shannon. We'd love to have you come on again in the next 6 months to a year. And this is
Anthony, it's been my pleasure.
Past us, and hope to see you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.